To the B2B Marketing Summit wrap-up here with Marketing Sherpa and Genius.com. This event is just going to be a quick takeaway of the two events that we just had in San Francisco and Boston, with some takeaways distilled from 478 marketers on lead nurturing, social media marketing, and more. So before we start the event, I just want to take care of some housekeeping stuff. So first of all, we encourage you to join the conversation on Twitter using hashtag B2B Summit. And we also encourage you to ask questions throughout this event. So unlike a lot of web seminars that happen out there, we will be taking questions throughout the event and peppering them in throughout. And so if things come up throughout this event, we'll be happy to ask them or to answer them along the way. So just submit them in the box on the bottom right of your screen where it says questions. So before we get started, I just want to introduce you to our speakers today. First off, my name is Matt West. I am the host today, and I will take you through this event. The two speakers are Brian Carroll and Daniel Burstein. Daniel is the Associate Director of Editorial Content for Mech Labs, overseeing all editorial content on the Marketing Experiments and Marketing Sherpa sites. Asked what he does, Dan says to marketers, essentially, our job is to help you do your job better. Brian Carroll is CEO of InTouch and author of Lead Generation for the Complex Sale by McGraw-Hill, and the B2B Lead Generation blog with expertise related to B2B marketing, lead generation, and complex sales. The success of his business, books, blog, etc., have led to numerous speaking engagements where he speaks to 20,000 people a year on improving marketing effectiveness and lead generation strategies for a complex sale. So at that, I'm going to hand this over to the speakers, and I think, Daniel, you're first.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and thanks to everyone on the line who's joining us. People on the line, there's a lot of people that were at B2B Summit, but we also have many that just signed up and weren't at B2B Summit. So I want to make sure you know what we're summing up, essentially. Like Matt said, we hold B2B Summit on both coasts in San Francisco in early October, in Boston in late October. We had almost 500 marketers there, 21 speakers, and here's my challenge in putting together a 1-hour presentation about this. We had almost 20 hours of case studies and how-to training and networking. So get ready. Turn off your email programs, turn off Skype, turn off anything else you're using. We're going to be going pretty quickly. We've only got 60 minutes to sum all of this up. But we're going to also provide this deck to you after the call. So while we're hitting a lot of different tactics and topics very quickly to hopefully provide some insights for everybody, you can then go back after the call at your own pace and see what interests you and dive deeper into that. Also, as Matt said, you have the unique opportunity with two very experienced B2B marketers on here, Matt West and Brian Carroll, to ask them whatever questions you have. So if we're going too quick and you can't catch something, please ask them. I'm not going to put Brian on the spot and ask what he charges per hour for consulting, but trust me, you're getting a pretty good deal on this. Also use hashtag Summit B2B Marketing. We've got our Director of Content and Development, Todd Lebo, in the office with me here, and as well as Justin, our Senior Marketing Manager. They're going to be tweeting on that hashtag, so you can ask your questions. You can also share your own insights about the topics we're talking about and help your fellow marketers. With that, let's dive into it. I think it makes most sense to look at this in a funnel approach, as that's how most marketers approach lead generation. So we're going to start with inbound marketing, how to drive that traffic to your site. Then we're going to get into, once that traffic's at your site, how are you going to convert that into a lead? And we're going to end it with lead management. Brian Carroll's going to talk about that. And a really nice quote he had at the summit. He said, if sales doesn't want leads, they want opportunities. He's going to help you do that for your sales department. Let's start with inbound marketing. Social media is one of the first things that come to mind when people think of inbound marketing. And Sergio Bolaño, the Mech Labs Director of Research, when he was teaching about social media marketing at the summit, he had this great quote about basically, if you don't have a purposeful architecture, you've got random acts of social marketing. And in many other marketing disciplines, we approach it in such a more systematic fashion. But with social media marketing, since it's so new, sometimes we're just searching. We're not sure what to do. So where do you begin? Or if you've already started, how do you get to where you want to be? Well, these are three questions that Sergio did research with, I believe, 2,300 marketers. for our benchmark report, and he came up with a roadmap methodology. And part of that methodology, he says you should ask yourself these 3 basic questions of where are you now, where do you want to be, and how do you get there from here. Where are you now? Again, you're going to get this in the follow-up. You can look at this a little closer, but by filling out this basic worksheet, you get a sense of what your phase of social marketing maturity is. You know, how much intelligence do you really have? How much of a strategy do you have? Are you sure of your objectives? Why are you using the platforms that you're using? To give you a sense of where other marketers are, they're pretty evenly split between the phase of what we call the trial phase, where they have no specific process for social media marketing, a transition phase where they're starting to get a process and a few guidelines and are, you know, just randomly performing that, and the fewest are at the strategic phase, where there's really a formal process, repeatable guidelines, it's routinely performed. It's like a lot of other types of marketing that you're doing. For question 2, where do you want to be? This might seem obvious at first, but when you sit down and think about it, why do social media marketing if you're going to do it at all? Alex Plant from NetApp, he was on our social media marketing panel at B2B Summit, and he brought up a very good point. He said, define social media marketing before someone else does it for you, before your business leaders do it for you. And he had a great anecdote about how he was meeting with his head of sales in New York, I believe it was, and they were talking about Twitter. And the head of sales was like, oh, Twitter's great. My teenage daughter uses it. You know, he didn't see any business value to it. But then when Alex was able to say, look, here's one example of how we use Twitter. We had, you know, a major customer complaining on Twitter about our product, and we were able to address it by listening through social media and then by actually reaching out to him. It really opened the sales leader's eyes up to the possibilities of social media marketing. So think about why do you want to do it? What do you want to be on social media? And then lastly, how are you going to get there from here? As part of the social media marketing benchmark survey, we asked a lot of different marketers where they are. As we said, the roadmap, by the way, as you can see in the lower left, stands for research, objectives, action, and devices, the 4 steps you should take in your methodology. But as marketers were less mature, they were more in the trial phase. You can see on the left, they focused more on devices. And it's very interesting that devices just kind of crashes down as they get into the strategic phase. Because the real lesson here is it's not about the technology, it's about creating a strategy that outlives that technology. I know for me personally, I remember when Friendster was the thing to do. I don't remember Friendster, that was a social media thing. And then MySpace was huge, and you know, now we hear Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So don't focus on your devices. And Matt, maybe you could talk for a second about where you should be focusing.
Yeah, actually,
Twitter is not a strategy.
This question comes up all the time, and you know, people ask. Well, we do a lot of events and speaking engagements on social media, and the one thing that always comes up before people actually think about the strategic side is which one is best for me? Which one is the best for my industry? What have you seen works best? And the reality is, all of them and none of them. It's not necessarily about a platform. It's really about learning about your audience, where they are, where they have their conversations, what conversations they have, and most importantly, what is the best way for you to start engaging in the conversation. So one of the things to put this in perspective to think about is when Facebook first came out and LinkedIn first came out. I remember going on LinkedIn and just seeing who all was out there, and everybody thought of it as more of like an HR type of site, a good place to get your resume out there, good place to share information about something professional. Then Facebook came out, and it was all about, you know, talking about your friends, meeting up with people from high school or college, sharing pictures, and it was really, they were kind of isolated. And over time, probably the last year, less and less time is actually being spent in either one of those applications, but it's all the go-betweens and the plugins and the add-ons to those apps and the aggregators. For instance, a lot of us will sit in Hootsuite, and you know, we'll manage from a professional standpoint, at least. You know, I'll be looking at my Facebook, my LinkedIn, my Twitter feeds, all on one screen, and all the groups will also be sitting up there as well. So it's really not about a single platform, which is best, or which one should I be on. It's really about that ability to listen to the customers that are best for you and actually join in on that conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And the great thing about that is when you step back away from this device-centric, this platform-centric view, and you actually look at your overall objective of why you're using social marketing, you might come up with some pretty interesting ways of using the whole objective behind it, what I'm trying to say. Let me give you an example. Greg Sherry from Verint Systems, he presented, he was thinking of social marketing concepts. He was thinking, I want to build a community, you know. Beyond Twitter, beyond anything like that, how can I integrate those social concepts into workshops and user groups that we hold? And they hold a user group called the Driving Innovation Annual Customer Conference. And they were looking at possible vendors of, hey, how can, again, we get more social networking, more community involvement? And the proposal from a vendor was over $58,000. And then they had this very simple idea, well, why don't we just have some fields in the registration, and we can ask people who are signing up, what vertical market are they in? What area of expertise do they have? What interests them? Where are they geographically? And not only could they use that data throughout the year, knowing more about their customers, but they were able to use that data on site. Let me show you how. They very, very simple, very low tech. They created the badges when people came into the conference. And you know, most badges I've seen, it usually just has, you know, your name, your company, maybe it's even got the city and state or something. But they added color coding for people's area of knowledge and expertise, for areas they'd like to learn more about, for what their vertical market and industry is. And this way, when you're walking around and you can see people who have a similar interest than you, you can have a conversation with them. Also, when they had any networking functions like you know, drinks after some of the sessions, they did something else very simple. They had color-coded balloons. So basically, if you're interested in e-learning and coaching, for example, hey, go to the place where the red balloons are and talk to everyone else who's interested in e-learning and coaching. And I believe we got a question from Matt.
Yeah, actually, a good one came in. This is actually taking a step back to the last slide, but that's okay. So this is coming in from Mark. So social media is attractive to us in our marketing department, but we're a bit younger than our target audience in the manufacturing world, and it doesn't seem that they're using Twitter or Facebook. Is it worth developing a strategy if our audience target won't follow us and use social media?
Yeah. Brian, do you have any thoughts around that?
Well, I do. In fact, while I was at the summit, we were meeting with a major manufacturer and one of the largest in the world, and they had talked about their social media strategy. And they said, you know, right now for our audience, the CEOs we're reaching, it's not them that we're developing a social media for. It's for their sons and daughters who are going to be taking over control of these large family-owned businesses or dealerships. And so they're the ones who are embracing social media, and so they looked at it not in terms of who they are today, but they were thinking very future-focused. And so I obviously need to know more about this particular audience member's business, but that was the valid reason we heard another company who sells to manufacturers was looking.
That's great. You know, that's something I've also seen a lot of, which really at this point it's not necessarily about just listening and answering questions. It's about being able to be out there and be a viable partner to people. And what I mean by that is if you go around and just go to any company's website, you know, from what we've seen, it's between 80 and 90% of companies out there actually have their Twitter feed or their Twitter, you know, follow us on Twitter and their Facebook groups pages listed on their website, and it just adds a little bit more credibility that they're actually a newer player in the place. They're keeping up with times and et cetera.
Thanks, Matt and Brian, and thanks for the question. Let's move on to talking about what social media really can and can't do for you. You know, people get very excited about social media, the possibility of sharing, but Daryl Nielsen and Mia Dand were presenting from HP, and they want to be very clear about the fact that social media will not save bad content. So, for example, you've all probably seen these social media sharing buttons that people like to tack on to things, and they had a big email campaign where they put these on there, and they were really trying to drive home the point. If people aren't reading your email now, people aren't going to be sharing your email. So one of the first steps, too, for social media is making sure you have quality content. There were a few basic ways they went about this. They have a worldwide audience. Daryl and Mia are at a worldwide level on HP. And so they used Hootsuite to get a geographical understanding of where their customers are. And they said, you know, at first they ran into a problem where one of the main people who was tweeting was in Singapore. And so he'd tweet all the time. That was great. It wasn't getting retweeted much. And then they stopped and thought about it. Well, If someone's tweeting in Singapore, that's 3 a.m. for some of the rest of their clients in America, say. So you got to make sure that you're talking to people when they want to be talked to. They also monitored user-generated content. They were trying to find what are the hot topics and trends. And so not only were they monitoring what they're putting out and what HP is putting out, but they're just trying to see what are their potential customers talking about in general. And again, when we go back to finding the persona and finding the right customers and finding where they're talking, it's not only about talking to them through LinkedIn or Twitter, it's also about listening to them to find out what content you should be producing. And then they did something very basic too, is look at, well, what's getting a lot of clicks, and that's what we should plan our content around. And one point I want to bring up that they mentioned is if you add any sharing through email, you have to keep in mind privacy considerations, that when it's shared, no one's personal information is shared, and working closely with your email service provider to do that. Something else, and we're just kind of jumping ahead a little in terms of lead nurturing, quality content was also really important there. And I was actually flying back on the plane from Boston, and I was sitting next to a marketer that I happened to meet at lunch, and he said that something Brian said at Summit really struck him about the importance of quality content behind lead nurturing, and that lead nurturing isn't just sending out a bunch of emails, it's actually helping people. Actually, Brian, you're on the call, if you want to expand on that point a little. I think that really resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are confused, especially around social media and lead nurturing. And from a content standpoint, there's such an emphasis on content. We talked about the quality, and even Matt touched on that in his comments earlier. But the acid test, I would say, to know if you're nurturing or not is this. Is what you're sharing with people from a content standpoint valuable to them, even if they never buy from you? And that, to me, if you use it as a standard, it really helps put focus into you're adding value with every single touch. The problem is people don't want more content. They want more relevant and valuable content. And that's the question you need to be asking yourself is, how can we be valuable with what we're sharing so we're able to communicate and build relationships with people by adding value with every touch?
And that's a great point, Brian, and that's a real challenge a lot of marketers face, is having that relevant, valuable content. I could just say from my role here at Marketing Sherpa, there's a long list of B2B marketers who come to us to buy our content from us to help them with their lead generation and lead nurturing efforts, because it's hard to come up with that relevant content. And so here's some points I wanted to share for you from Marco Muehlner and Tom Shaneborn from Web Trends, essentially content marketing, content creation points. At Web Trends, they essentially sought to make their marketing department more of a publishing department. They were wanting to educate their customers, build their own credibility, and of course, in the end, generate leads. So they changed their approach from this, typical vertical approach of, say, running a bunch of email batters, sending people to a webinar, like the one you're on right now, and getting some leads out of that and rooting them and nurturing them. And instead, they said, let's focus on earned impressions. Let's put out some quality content out there that's really valuable to people, that's going to bring people into us. Now, as you can see in that lower balloon there, this is not a necessarily new idea with social media, right? We've always done this with the press. We've tried to get earned mentions with newspapers before, the internet even came along. But, there's so much more of a possible ecosystem there with blogs, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And then what they were doing from these earned impressions, that's where their leads were coming from. And you can see here, they had some good improvements, some good growth. They've only been doing it for about 6 months. They're still testing it out. But more visitors, more page views. And but the question always comes, well, how do I do this? People just have such a challenge of where do I get the content from? So I just picked out a few elements from their presentation that I thought might be helpful in helping you come up with the content. And one of the things they said was to find your rock stars. So I'll tell you right here, from even in marketing experiments and Marketing Sherpa, we have some really impressive subject matter experts in a lot of different topics. But the problem is they don't see a lot of what they do as valuable. It's very odd. We've got a guy that knows more about analytics than almost anyone, but you ask him to try to write a blog post about it or get on a webinar about it, and he feels that, unless he's talking to the upper 1% of analytics users, no one's going to care. When in reality, something that he can just jot off in a quick email is probably very valuable if you turn that into a blog post for people that aren't as educated on analytics. And frankly, I've even had this conversation internally with our HR person where for our internal blog, and I said, you know all these things that you don't even think you know that would be helpful internally here. So it's seeking those people out, and rockstar is a great term for it because not only do you want to seek them out and get them to help you with the content, but you want to raise their visibility and show them, there's a reason for it. And whether they're in engineering or whether they're in industrial crane sales, whatever, they could be the rock stars of that industry. Another good thing he mentioned is, frankly, sometimes we have to lower the bar. Sometimes we don't want to go public with anything unless it's absolutely perfect, But this isn't a TV campaign where it's going to, air on a Super Bowl and we've got months and months of lead time to get it done. There's a lot of basic things you can do to get good content out to your audience. And here's 10 ideas. Again, you can look at the slides we send out and see if any of these are right for you. But even from a simple IM conversation, an instant messaging conversation that you turn into a blog post, to look in your email outbox. What answers are you already giving to people that might be valuable on a blog or in some other form of content marketing? You might really surprise yourself. And something else counterintuitive, he said, but sometimes you just got to kill stuff. Marketing Sherpa and Marketing Experiments, our websites are about 10 years old, and frankly, some of the older stuff we're not the most proud of. Our marketing director around here calls them landmines. We always come across older stuff we have, and it's not stuff we want people sharing anymore. So you always have to balance that out with SEO considerations. But keep in mind, just because it's older doesn't mean people can't find it on the web. And lastly, avoid committees. We had David Meerman Scott. He was nice enough to stop by at our Boston Summit. He's going to be our keynote speaker for our email summit in January in Las Vegas. And he recently wrote a book called Real-Time Marketing and PR. And his point was, you got to be on top of real-time what's going on right now. And to do that, you frankly just can't have a committee. You've got to be able to act quickly, and you've got to be able to just throw it out there and take a chance. So, well, that's what we have to say about inbound marketing. And next, we're about to move to, okay, you're bringing that audience in. You're likely bringing them to a landing page. So, Matt, do you want to talk about the importance of landing page optimization in a lot of marketers?
Yeah. Absolutely. So this bit is this is actually another piece that came in from the new 2011 B2B marketing benchmark report that Marketing Sherpa just did. So another point from this is that social media might be a hot topic, yet as much as B2B marketers are increasing the investment in social media, they're also increasing their investment in their website. So that's something I really hope is happening, because let's put it into context of paid advertising or any kind of paid marketing piece. If you were to go out there and spend a ton of money on an ad campaign that drove to your website, you would invest in the landing pages and the landing environment to make sure that you could get the most out of every one of the programs that you're doing. So while social media is free to use, it's an enormous investment in both people time as well as there is a lot of money spent. So another big thing there too is just the lost opportunity. If you're not optimizing your websites, you're really losing out on a tremendous opportunity. And also being able to track as people are coming in. If you can be out there utilizing social media, tracking those conversations, and then when they generate enough interest to actually come through to your website, it's really important to track that transaction. That's something that here at Genius we refer to the 4 R's. So the first R is reach, and that's where we talk about getting out there in the social media area and being able to have good conversations with people that provide valuable content and interaction, and then entice them to want to come read more on your website and do more on your website. And that's where we have the response phase. And at that response phase, that's really where, if you're going to drive them to the next one, which is relationship, you have to have a solid landing environment that actually goes along with what you talk about out there in social media.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I couldn't agree more. Like I said, social media is a hot topic, but when we asked in our social media marketing benchmark survey, well, what are you using social media for? You can see the #1 reason was to increase website traffic, and on the right you can see what is the basic architecture most people use. While they're using Twitter, YouTube, all these different social media platforms, well, it's all driving back to that website. So if you're investing all this time to drive all that traffic to this website, and it's not just from social media, it's from everything from a print ad in a trade pub to, heck, if you've got your name on a stadium, people are going to look you up on your website. So you're investing all that money, all that time, all that effort driving people to that landing page, you better make sure that landing page is as good as possible and that website's as good as possible to convert people. So one way we want to help you do that here at Mech Labs through Marketing Experiments, we do a lot of experiments and research landing page optimization. I think roughly about 200 experiments a year. We try to track it one year. And here's what I'm going to share with you from a leading software provider. It's fairly anonymized because that's what we do, but just at the Boston B2B Summit, they let us know that we can share their name, so I can let you in that this is NetSuite. You'll see when you actually see some of their creative samples that it's anonymized. But what they were trying to do was, find out the overall process that's going to generate the most leads. And the approach we took was just a radical redesign of our whole lead generation process. So again, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but I think there's 3 ideas in here that you could probably, before the end of the week, use on your own process to help test it and see if it increases your own conversion. So you can see that while we talked about inbound marketing as a great way to get an audience to your site, they were using PPC ads, which I'm sure a lot of people are using. And so you can see the original ad and the optimized ad there, and by optimizing it, we increased clicks 21%. And how? Why did we increase clicks? Well, it comes down to specificity. Like I said, we do a lot of experiments here at Mech Labs, marketing experiments, and we have a lot of complex heuristics about this. You can go to marketingexperiments.com and see some of our thoughts on why people do what they do. We call it cognitive response optimization. And on marketingexperiments.com, we've got a whole research directory of all the different experiments we run with a lot of deeper insights into major changes you can make. But at a very high level, one of the top principles we've noticed is being specific. If you look at the 2 ads there, the PPC ads, there's a lot of ads people are going to see. And when you say something vague like award-winning or free trial, you're not really sticking out. But when you can say specifically you're the #1 on-demand software, that you have 6,459 plus world clients, then you're really reaching out to people, they're really understanding why they should choose you. So let's look. So we got a 21% increase in click-through through the PPC ads. But obviously we kept going through the whole funnel here, and we got to the landing page. Now, there are a few problems we identified with this landing page, such as there was, competing objectives, there was several columns, but let's look at, some of the major changes we made. The one main thing you can see on the bottom is we took those 3 call to actions and we reduced them to 1 call to action. That's a simple change you can make on your own site as well. But if you look at the before and after, there were 54% more clicks on the optimized landing page. And another principle we identified was there was more continuity between the PPC ad and the landing page. You have to remember, when people go through, they see your PPC ad, or even they're searching on Google, they're likely not just opening your site. They're probably researching something. They're opening 5 sites or 10 sites in all different tabs. And they're quickly looking through, and if they aren't sure and aren't clear why what they clicked on from your ad makes sense with what they landed on, it's very easy to close it or hit the back button and go somewhere else. I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced it. You even see an email message from a friend and you click through, and you get to the landing page and it makes no sense from what you click through on, and you have no reason to be on that page. So as you look at how you drive traffic to your landing pages, look at, does it make sense, the whole process, not just the PPC ad or even Twitter message individually, but is there continuity between that message, between that ad, and where you're sending people? And so, again, we kept going when we got to the form. Okay, this is where they're getting their leads for a free trial. Again, there was little connection to the landing page or the PPC ad. We seek to optimize the form. And something to keep in mind here, when Flip McLaughlin was presenting this, he made a great point. Where our office is located just a few blocks from the beach here, and I'm not a fisherman myself, but he said, when you're going fishing, think of the process that you have when you're fishing, right? You put the bait on the hook, you throw the hook out there, you get the fish, and you're reeling the fish in, right? Well, while you're reeling that fish in, you never let any slack on the line. You keep reeling and pulling, because if you let slack on the line, well, the fish is just going to swim away. It's going to spit the bait out. And think about it. How many of us on our, we get people through a certain process, we get our audience through a certain process, and then, well, when they get to the sign-up page, well, that's it. We just hope they're going to sign up. We've got to make sure that there's also, we keep giving them a valid reason to go through with it. And, a free trial just isn't enough. So as you can see in the before and after on the left, well, the main value proposition for, we got people all the way through to that form sign-up, but once you get that form sign-up, there's a lot of anxiety. Are you going to get a sales call from someone? How are they going to use your information? You've got all these different issues, and frankly, the only value they were offering was a free trial. Now, on the optimized page, we kept that world's #1 on-demand software. We kept making sure that there was value for them, even with the testimonials on the right. and the optimized form got 97% more submissions from that. And it all ties back to increasing relevance. That's the third principle we identified. Making sure, even all the way down to the form that you're having people submit, make sure you're relevant to your audience's motivations. One way you can do this is through a channel map. And so we've got a few basic steps here for constructing a channel map. I'm not going to have time to go through this in-depthly at all. I mean, we could have an entire 1-hour webinar on just constructing a channel map. And in fact, we have training on marketingexperiments.com. We have online training, and I think we have an entire session just about constructing a channel map. But at a very high level, you want to list each channel and understand each channel you have. You can use your metrics program or a shopping cart program to do that. Then you want to rank each channel, deciding which is most important to you. Again, I'm going through this quickly, but you'll get in the slides after. You can go through at your own pace and decide how you do it for, how this works for you. You want to profile each channel, decide what type of channel it is, what some common demographic attributes for the channel. Then you want to make sure you're tracking the channel, of course. You can probably do this in a fairly easy way. But then match each channel to using both, we say, external discovery, right, where you can look in publications or, as we talked before, even some social media listening about your profile targets, and some internal discovery, just asking your current customers, even if they came in through one channel, what else are they using, For example, if it's very industry related, what other industry pubs are they using, or what other industry blogs are they using? And that's a way to reach out to a new audience. And then in the end, of course, you want to optimize and keep continuing these steps to improve it and keep getting better. So what you can then do, once you have a firm understanding of your channel and your customers and where they're coming from, that's what you can optimize your landing page and your form submission page off of. From that, from firmly understanding their motivations and being relevant to those motivations, you can change the headline of your landing page, the problem text that you set your landing page up, the benefit statement you're using, everything, the pictures, the subheadlines, the copy, it all ties on through to basing on where people are coming from and why they're coming to your site. So to kind of finish the story up from this experiment, you can see by optimizing this entire funnel, we got some pretty good results. There was a 272% increase in overall conversion, which meant 4 times more monthly profit for NetSuite. Because again, not only did we look at those 3 principles, but we looked at it across the funnel. And you can't really optimize in a vacuum. You can't just look at a landing page. You can't just look at a form page. You have to look at your entire funnel and your entire process and see if it's all working together. With that, now that we've kind of brought you from the step to bringing your audience in, now to converting it and getting that lead, now let's maybe Matt, you can introduce Brian as we talk about, how can you get a high quality lead from that?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So we talked a lot about how to drive people to your website. Once you get them to your website, how to convert them. But once you convert them into actually having a relationship with you, how do you maintain that? How do you work those people toward a sale? So it's really clear that it's not just about generating a high volume of leads. We are talking about B2B sales here. So the goal really should be, how do I, at every step in this process, get each of the leads that do come in closer to having a conversation with a live sales rep? So, this is really important because people are actually, if you look at this chart, you can see that they're investing in lead management systems and the process. Actually, a couple weeks ago, I did a webinar with Jen Doyle, who actually wrote the 2011 B2B Marketing Sherpa benchmark report. And it really falls in line with showing how people's investments in marketing automation, when we talk about lead management, that's, marketing automation is the #1 tool for lead management. And what they found is that 80% of people are either currently using or are in the middle of implementing or will be implementing a marketing automation system in 2011. So this is really interesting to look at because just a year ago, that was pretty much flipped on its head. It was 20% of the people out there were actually looking at marketing automation, and 80% weren't looking into it. So this is actually a really interesting point here as we hand it over to Brian.
Thank you, Matt. So what I want to do is just share with you in the experiment that we ran with InTouch. InTouch is now part of MEC Labs group. And what I shared with everyone was as Matt talked about, it's not about more, but it's being better with the leads we already have. And I just want to say that first and foremost, if I could do one thing, I'd love to change the word lead. I think in a lot of ways, leads have been thought of as disposable or something that we're trying to give to salespeople. But really, if we realize these leads are people, and more importantly, if we could use the term, instead of leads, future customers, I think we treat our leads differently. And that's why lead management is so important. Is I wanted to share a case study. It's an IT company, 80 million in revenue, 100 channel partners, and 27 marketers. And the experiment, the problem of what they were dealing with is that the company was facing significant challenges. The marketing team did a fabulous job with the same budget from the previous year to the following year, generating a lot more activity in terms of the number of leads. But when they looked at the conversion and pipeline of what they were getting the same results. And in fact, the marketing team felt the leads went into a black hole. They had less than a 2% lead-to-sale conversion rate. And they were struggling because sales didn't close the loop on the leads. So the bottom line is they couldn't measure ROI. And I don't know for you if any of these lead management issues sound familiar, but what we did is we addressed those specific issues. We found that there wasn't a consensus on what the word lead means. So these future customers, there was a complete lack of alignment. The sales team had a different idea for marketing, and in large part that was the reason why literally 80% of the marketing-generated leads were getting lost, ignored, discarded. So we focused on figuring out what the word lead means, and then getting a universal lead definition in place so that the leads were qualified and prioritized against this universal lead definition. And the leads that didn't meet the definition of being sales ready were put into a nurturing process so that the sales team didn't have to pursue the majority of leads. They were really pursuing those that had the highest likelihood of converting into an opportunity. And in other words, the marketing team was really taking care of the early stage future customers. Meanwhile, the sales team was focusing on those that were more in the middle and later stages. We also focused on getting a good handoff process and also setting up an accountability, a service level agreement between marketing and sales. And by rectifying these issues, we basically put together a solution that looks like this. The idea came down to is we said, let's run marketing like sales, and that marketing can develop a pipeline just like sales can. And the sales team still developed their own leads, but that the marketing pipeline, really, if we could make that better and bigger by putting a nurturing process, having a universal lead definition, ultimately a better and bigger marketing pipeline impacted the sales pipeline. And the results of that were that we had a 375% increase in the number of sales-ready leads. They were closing the loop in every lead. Their early stage leads from 0 to 60% being nurtured. Their lead to sales opportunity rate, leads that went to their pipeline as forecast revenue, jumped from 4 to 12%. And the bottom line is they had 200% more opportunities in their sales pipeline by just getting better at lead management. And so what I did is I shared with everyone this 5-step playbook that we put into place. I wanted to focus on step 1 here because what I found is almost everyone who's on today's webinar probably has a lead definition. I don't have a doubt that you do if you don't get one. But the question I have is, when was the last time you reviewed your lead definition with your sales organization or channel partners? Now that's where the challenge really happens, because unless you get clarity on that, you don't have a standard to qualify. You don't know who to nurture as early stage versus those that should go to your sales team. And you don't have a process. And that's where looking at sales readiness is important. Most people are giving level 1 leads to salespeople, which is inquiries. And what you really need to do is give level 3. This is from serious decisions. People who have specific needs and an interest, and realize that people can move through that spectrum. The other thing is that looking at the things that salespeople need, when salespeople are looking at leads, they're thinking differently. They're looking at the probability and the value of that process, of how likely that customer is going to go. And could you advance to the next slide? What I want to do is just go ahead and click a few times to get the animation there. Thank you. Um, what they are really looking for is salespeople are looking for opportunities. So their question is how likely is this person going to buy within 6 months? And most salespeople cannot look beyond 2 quarters because they're measured based on quota. And so they're looking at the probability of, is that person going to buy in the value? And that impacts the size of the deal. They look at the influence of the account. There's a whole host of other things. And what I wanted to share with you is that as you work with your sales organization, the key takeaways are this. The better you are at getting clarity on universal lead definition, and the more qualification information you can provide your salespeople, the more likely they are to act on leads. And the other side is that setting these higher standards on leads does actually impact conversion with the leads that go to your pipeline and leads that sell. We've actually proven that giving more leads to salespeople, if you aren't focusing on turning up the quality dial, actually can impact negatively your revenue and marketing performance. So set your standards high, and what I recommend you do is, as part of this lead definition, work to set up a service level agreement. It goes like this. The marketing team sitting down with the sales team to figure out 2 questions. One, what is it that you need from us to really help you sell? And you need to get clarity on that. The sub-questions of that question is, what should we start doing that we aren't doing now? And what should we stop doing that's not adding any value to you? The second question, setting up a service level agreement, is this. For us to be 100% certain when we give you a lead that you will pursue it and provide feedback 100% of the time, what are the must-have questions that we need to answer for you to pursue these leads and provide us feedback? And as part of that process, if we provide these standards to you and we set up a service agreement, when can I expect that you'll act on these leads and provide this feedback? And we don't have time to get into the other steps we talked about, but the point is that we're actually going to be doing more in-depth takeaways in this area, talking about leading trends. And one of the things in sales and marketing alignment that we're focusing on, you can go to a free webinar here, startwiththelead.com/B2B Summit. We'll do a deeper dive. But I wanted to go ahead and hand it back, and here's some things that you can do to make it happen. Daniel?
Thanks, Brian. And if you've got any questions, feel free to either use the Q&A feature of GoToWebinar or use hashtag B2B Summit on Twitter. We'd also love to hear your opinions on how you've been working with sales to make things happen using hashtag B2B Summit on Twitter. Wanted to sum things up a little. One of the biggest things we had from B2B Summit, a lot of marketers felt like there was so much information, and frankly, we tried to put a lot of information in this webinar too. Well, how do you go forward and make it happen? We're talking about now is the different types of things to do in your organization, right? There's tips, techniques, tactics, but sometimes some marketers, I know I have in my experience, they struggle with, well, how do you get it done in your organization? How do you make it happen? And one of the things, you got to be strategic about how you present your campaigns and your vision to the C-level. So this chart right here is based out of our B2B marketing benchmark report, which just came out, our 2011 report. And we asked marketers, how do you communicate with your business leaders? And so 56% said reporting on metrics of importance to the C-level, like ROI and profit margins, and 55% said delivering results in a manner that's easy for non-marketing professionals to conceptualize. Those were our top 2 answers. So to me, that's not surprising that those are our top 2 answers. To me, here's what's really shocking about that. Those top 2 answers, they're slightly over half. So I've got to ask myself, what are the other half of marketers doing? If you're not talking to C-level executives with numbers that matter to them, if you're not speaking to them instead of in a marketing conversation, in a business level conversation, then how are you talking to them, and how are you selling it internally? So I think while we can have all the best techniques and advice that we can offer, you also have to focus on that internal marketing. How are you selling it internally to your business leaders? And something I'd like, Brian, if you could comment on this a little more. It's something you talked about at B2B Summit. It's one thing, talk to your business leaders, but from my experience, sales and marketing, there's always a little I don't know how to put this nicely, but a little friction there. You know, sales is always doubting what marketing is doing. You know, why are they investing this way? They're not providing enough leads. They're not providing good enough leads. So, Brian, something you mentioned is to have these, you know, close that loop, to have these huddles between sales and marketing often to make sure that there's communication there. Can you speak a little more about that?
Absolutely. So, you know, it's sales and marketing need to act as one team, and I can really tell the likelihood that the marketing investment is going to turn an ROI based on how frequently sales and marketing huddle together. It's like in team sports, you aren't going to win if you aren't huddling between plays to figure out what's working and what's not working, and then take the correctives. And I just find that the marketing team and sales team oftentimes aren't talking enough, and when they do talk, they aren't talking about the things that are going to move the needle. And so what we focus on from a huddling standpoint is if you get clarity on sales-related lead definition and you're providing that to your team, what we found is very effective is that marketing isn't just talking about the things that they're doing, but that they're really going to the sales team to figure out with what's happened with this lead. Is it converting to pipeline? How can we help you? And also start looking at going beyond the lead so that it is not just that we've handed something to you, but how can we help you accelerate this deal through the pipeline? And what I found is that just being able to get feedback to know what's working, that the sales team knows you're listening, you're applying that feedback, and vice versa, there's this shared accountability. And I would say that to set the stage, some of you may be huddling up once a month or once a quarter as you're doing your quarterly business reviews and planning. What I would recommend is that you're doing it weekly or bi-weekly, and at least at minimum monthly, to focus in on especially lead generation, because that's the #1 single touch point in B2B between marketing and sales. So that's what I have to say about huddling, and I've written quite a bit about that as well too.
So actually, there's a great question that came in that is right in line with this, and you kind of answered it, but it might be worth continuing the conversation a little bit on this. This question came up a little bit ago. It said, is lead nurturing a sales or marketing role? And you know, it's something that we get here all the time, and there's an interesting thing. If you look at companies that are you know, aligning well, and you look at what their sales and marketing funnel looks like, you'll notice that marketing is involved much further down that funnel, and sales is also, when you pull in things like, so they're involved much further up the funnel when you look at things like social media and how those conversations are being handled in between the two organizations. So actually, Brian, do you have anything else to say on that?
Oh, you bet I do. So, I think that from a nurturing perspective, it's actually done both by marketing and sales. It's just that there's a difference. Salespeople absolutely nurture, and what they're capable of doing, though, because they are there's a fixed limit to how many relationships a salesperson can manage, is that there's a limited number of people they can nurture. And what we found is that nurturing is usually happening with people who are in their pipeline or people who were in their pipeline that have fallen out from a forecast standpoint. And where we had, from a marketing standpoint, come along sales is that if we think that we can run marketing like sales, which I believe you can, I think that marketing can build that marketing funnel of early stage leads until they're ready to talk to a salesperson. That's where marketing should nurture. Until they're ready to talk to a salesperson, they fit your universal lead definition. But also, some of the same tools marketing is creating for nurturing. Think about ways that you can help your sales team nurture, because the struggle salespeople have after they talk with someone and they don't buy is they are always struggling with figuring out what do I talk to them about next. So they just call the touch base, they just call the follow-up. This is where we can really add a tremendous amount of value, helping our salespeople have relevant content, which is the valid business reason for them to call and nurture people that are in their pipeline or people who aren't. So that's why I say it's both, is that marketing can do it through marketing automation more on a one-to-many basis, and salespeople are bringing that from a one-to-one basis. There's also a bridge between marketing and sales which is often inside sales, or sometimes it's referred to as teleprospecting, that also owns that nurturing process too, bringing the two funnels together.
Yeah, that's great, Brian. There's also another component that I've noticed too that software will help with this too. But we talk about bringing in leads and it being sort of a linear process of marketing, getting people at the top of the funnel, helping them fall through the funnel, and getting them handed over to sales. The one thing, especially in today's age, where we have to be very accountable for everything that we do in marketing, and we have to get the most out of every single lead that we generate or inquiry that we generate, is that the concept of nothing can be left falling on the floor. So, a lot of times what happens is marketing will generate leads. They'll get to the point where they're ready to be handed over to sales based on who they are, some actions that they've taken. They get over to sales, and yes, they are the right person with the right needs, but at the wrong time. So that sales rep will say, sorry, maybe I'll check back with this person later, and there's no more marketing. They just go dark, and maybe 6 months later they call them back if they remember to. But to have a process in place where the salesperson can actually go in and say, okay, this person is the right person, this is the right company, it's the wrong time, let's put this person in another bucket and allow marketing to sort of nurture them over time and continue that conversation on their behalf, is a very important component to add in there, and it really helps with efficiency and the economics of lead generation.
Thanks, Matt and Brian. We're going to have to wrap it up soon. We got two questions that I wanted to just at least briefly address. Joe wrote in on GoToWebinar and said, you talk about directing traffic to a landing page. Are you saying not to your website, but to a more specific landing page? What we found, as I was trying to show with that channel map, as much as possible, you want to tie what you're showing your customers to their specific motivation. So it's better to drive them to a specific landing page, for example, tied to a specific PPC ad, as we said, showing relevancy between that landing page and that PPC ad. Most websites, when you talk about driving people to a website, you're talking about driving them to a home page, and that home page likely has many different objectives. And then it's up to that visitor themselves to figure out and to self-select and to say, okay, where do I want to go, or how do I want to find the information I need? If you're driving people, whether through it's just a tweet, it's some form of inbound marketing, it's a PPC ad, it's a print ad, send them to a specific landing page tied to their motivations and that's relevant to them. There's one other question which I had a comment about, but I wanted to hear if you had, Matt, anything to say about this as well. Jack wrote in and said, what are tools to use to monitor user-generated content to identify hot topics? We'll talk about a few basic things, but let me say something at a general level. Try to be where your potential customers are. So we talk about tools, but just think of yourself as a potential customer. And I always try to do basic things like either read trade publications or just watch the things that I think my potential audience is watching to get a sense of what they're doing. That said, there are certain tools. Social media monitoring tools are available for free. Anything from TweetDeck following a specific hashtag, or looking in at different LinkedIn groups, or using Hootsuite to do a similar thing. And then there's more enterprise level platforms as well, like a Radian 6 or a Vocus or an Alterian, where you can listen in. Matt, did you have any tools that you like to use? Or?
Actually, those are all the tools I was going to throw out there. But I was also the one thing. This is kind of a layup for me here, but there's another component to it. It's not just the listening side of it, but it's also the ability to track people as they come in from those communications. So as you're taking part in those communications, to be able to put unique links out there and trackable links out there that can feed into your nurturing programs. So that's something that we do at Genius to be able to as you're in that social media place, you go in, you create a unique link based on the conversation as people come into your website. Before you even know who they are interacting on your website, they've now been tagged, and you can follow that conversation and follow their behavior on your website. So when they do convert into an actual inquiry by submitting a form, all that historical information of the social media interactions, and even if they're ad campaigns that they come in from, all that information is being added to their profile in your CRM system, which is a very important component to add on top of that.
That's great, Matt, and that's a good point. And that, along with as I mentioned, the channel map. That's also a great way to understand where your traffic is coming from. So as you said, having landing pages and showing them content that is relevant to them and to their motivation. Well, thanks. I want to wrap up the rest of this slide, and then we're probably going to tie it up here. But another key point I didn't want to leave the webinar without mentioning was, as I said, David Meerman Scott's going to be our keynote speaker at the Marketing Sherpa Email Summit in January at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. But he was nice enough; he kind of crashed into our Boston Summit. And he's recently wrote a book. It's called Real-Time Marketing and PR, which all the Email Summit attendees are going to get. He said social media is a tool, real-time marketing is a mindset. And I want to just rewind all the way back to what we originally talked about social media. And really anything we're talking about here now, is you have to focus on what is the overall objective of what you're doing. What mindset, what approach are you going to take? Are you going to take, for example, this real-time approach where, we're going to be on top of everything that's going on with our customers and react to them, and social media is just one tool for it? Are you going to take the approach of we're really going to serve our customers and our audience with our content, and we're going to nurture them with quality content, and that's how we're going to lead to sales, and that's what nurturing really is. That's what content really is, serving our audience. You have to find out why you're doing what you're doing before you just jump into any tool. And a last note, Cynthia Phillips of Rivet Software, formerly Rivet Software, gave a great presentation, and she talked about marketing's growing leadership role. And as part of that growing leadership role, I urge you, be your company's corporate conscience. In marketing, we work so hard on our brands. We put so much into them, both our personal time and energy and the investments from our marketing budget. And it's so easy now, especially in an age of social media, where essentially everyone is a publisher, for simple missteps in other parts of the organization that you have nothing to do with, in operations, new product launching, in customer service. Trip-ups there can really damage your brand, where what we're promising, which is essentially what the brand is, the brand we're creating. It's a promise to our potential customers and to our current customers. What we're promising simply isn't being delivered. And so we need to be those brand stewards. We need to make sure we're both part of setting and driving that direction, but also that we're part of making sure that everything the company does and everything they deliver on lives up to that brand, or we're just shooting ourselves in the foot, because in the end,
marketingsherpa.com. You can pick up your guide for a $100 discount. But I also want to remind everybody, when you get out of this event, you'll be presented with an opportunity to fill out a quick survey, and we'd really appreciate it if you could help submit that information. It helps us keep our webinars and content relevant, and we really appreciate you attending this today, and everybody have a great day. And I also want to say thanks to the speakers. Take care.